Echoes of Tomorrow. The wind whispered through the cracked windows of the old building, its cold fingers curling into the dark corners where dust and forgotten memories lived. Leah stood in the center of the room, her boots clicking softly against the worn wooden floor. She had been here before, but it felt different now. Time had stretched and warped, and yet, this place remained untouched by it all. The clock on the far wall ticked slowly, its hands frozen at a time she couldn't quite remember. Maybe it had always been this way, or maybe it was the future she was hearing, the echoes of tomorrow. The room was empty now, except for her. The remnants of a life that had once been, the faded photographs on the walls, and the broken furniture left behind like a puzzle with pieces scattered and missing. She hadn't meant to return to this place, hadn't meant to revisit the ghosts of her past. But the city had changed, and so had she. The whispers in her head had become too loud to ignore, telling her that she had to come back. It was a call she couldn't silence. Her fingers brushed lightly against the frame of an old photograph, a picture of a family, smiling, full of life. It felt so distant now, as if she were looking at a life that belonged to someone else. Her family, her past, had all been consumed by something she still didn't fully understand. The echoes of their voices had faded into nothingness, leaving her with nothing but questions and regrets. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. Her heartbeat quickened as she approached the old chair by the window, the one where her mother used to sit. Leah could almost see her there, the soft rustle of her dress, the gentle hum of a lullaby that used to comfort her at night. Leah. The voice came from behind her, faint and fragile, like a memory trying to claw its way back to the surface. She turned quickly, her heart racing. But there was no one there. The room was still. It wasn't the first time she had heard it, that whisper, that call. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks on her, grief, loneliness, a lack of closure. But now, as the wind howled outside and the shadows grew longer, she was beginning to wonder if the voices weren't from the past at all, but from a future she couldn't yet see. Another whisper. Leah. She moved towards the back of the room, toward the old wooden door that had always been locked, the door that her mother had warned her never to open. But tonight, it was slightly ajar, as though it had been waiting for her. With a trembling hand, Leah pushed the door open. The room beyond was small and dimly lit, filled with shelves of books, trinkets, and old maps that had long since yellowed with age. But it was the far wall that caught her attention, a wall covered in strange markings. Symbols scribbled in haste, as though someone had been trying to warn her, or perhaps show her something. Leah's breath caught as she stepped closer. The markings were familiar, too familiar. They were the same symbols she had seen in her dreams, in flashes that had come to her every night for weeks. They were a language she couldn't read but instinctively understood. They were warnings. Her fingers traced the shapes on the wall, her heart pounding as an unsettling hum filled the air. And then, as if triggered by her touch, the markings began to glow faintly, like embers igniting in the dark. In an instant, she was no longer in the room. She was standing in the same place, but the world had changed. The building around her was no longer old and abandoned, it was alive, vibrant, full of people. She could hear voices, laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the sound of a future that had yet to come. But the people weren't right. They looked like strangers, but there was something about their faces, their eyes, that made her stomach twist with unease. And then she saw herself, an older version of herself, standing in the center of the room, her face hard and unfamiliar. "Leah," the older her said, her voice cold, distant. "You were always meant to come here." The younger Leah took a step back, her breath coming in short gasps. "What is this? What are you trying to show me?" The older Leah smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile, it was a smile filled with the weight of unspoken truths, a smile that spoke of things done and undone, choices made and paths taken. "This is the future. The future you are running from. The future you can't escape." Leah's heart pounded as she reached for the older version of herself, but her hand passed through her like smoke, like a dream fading into the early morning light. The scene began to shift. The room around her melted away, and in its place, she was standing on a balcony overlooking a sprawling city. The city that had once been her home, now unrecognizable, swallowed by shadows and a strange, unfamiliar energy. The sky above was dark, tinged with hues of red and violet, and the air felt thick with something she couldn't name. "Leah, it's not too late," a voice whispered, but this time it wasn't from her future self. It was the voice of her mother, soft and distant, as if from a far-off dream. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and for a moment, she felt as though the world itself was shifting, as though the very fabric of time was unraveling before her eyes. And then, in the blink of an eye, she was back in the room, her fingers still tracing the symbols on the wall, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and confusion. The echoes of tomorrow had been so real, so vivid. They were a warning, yes, but they were also a promise that she could still change the course of what was to come. She wasn't sure how or why, but she knew she had to act. The future was not set in stone. The past could still be rewritten. With a final glance at the glowing symbols on the wall, Leah stepped back, her mind made up. The echoes of tomorrow would not be her fate. She would find a way to stop them, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something stir inside her, a glimmer of hope.